On a crisp autumn morning in a sleepy town, Tasha, a poised black woman in her 30s, walks down the quiet streets of a neighborhood that seems untouched by time. The sidewalks are lined with fallen leaves, painted in shades of amber and gold. The trees above her sway gently in the breeze. As she strolls with a purposeful yet relaxed pace, her black jacket fits her perfectly like a second skin, complementing her tall, slender frame. Beneath her calm and collected demeanor, she remains alert, her mind always processing the world around her. She knows the city well, but today her walk is more than a simple moment of peace. It is a temporary escape, a small break from the covert operations that keep her occupied day in and day out. As she moves down the street, her eyes catch the patrol car parked on the corner. Detective Harlan and Officer Reed sit inside it, talking animatedly at the football game last night. Their laughter echoes softly from within the vehicle. They are unaware of her presence at first, but Tasha's sharp eyes detect their attention shifting towards her. The car engine hums quietly as the officers begin to study her approach. They both lean back in their seats, exchanging a few quick words before one of them nudges the other and nods in her direction. Tasha doesn't break her stride. She's used to the attention. It's a subtle kind of recognition that she's learned to navigate over the years. It's not uncommon for people to take notice of her, but she's never the type to let it faze her. It's one of the many things she's perfected on the job, blending into the world around her without making a scene. It's an art she's mastered, though. On this particular morning, there's something different in the way they look at her. Maybe it's her steady walk or the way her dark curls bounce slightly as she moves. Whatever it is, it draws them in. The moment she gets closer, the patrol car window rolls down and Detective Harlan's voice calls out, breaking the silence of the morning. He grins playfully. "You lost, ma'am?" he asks in a tone that's both friendly and teasing. Reed chuckles from the passenger seat, adding, "Got a mission to save the world, or are you just out for a walk?" Their smiles are wide and unassuming. Tasha knows the game they're playing. It's the kind of small-town charm designed to make the day feel lighthearted and easy, and yet she feels the tension just below the surface. Tasha stops briefly. She turns her head slightly, meeting their eyes with a knowing smile, her gaze cool and calm yet sharp. She's not here to play their game, but she doesn't mind indulging them for a moment. "World-saving," she says, her voice laced with dry humor. "Please, I'm just getting my coffee." She keeps her tone casual, almost bored, as if this kind of banter is nothing new, but inside she's processing quickly. Her training never lets her switch off. Her mind is constantly scanning and analyzing every situation she enters. The officers exchange amused glances, clearly enjoying the interaction. Tasha allows them to talk for a few more moments, still standing just close enough to the patrol car to see the subtle exchange of looks between the two men. She's aware that they are now assessing her posture, her presence, but it doesn't bother her. They'll quickly move on after their moment of harmless banter, unaware of the layers beneath her surface. Tasha continues walking. The breeze gently brushes against her skin as she takes a slow breath in. It's a peaceful moment, but the instinct inside her is already beginning to shift. There's something in the air today, something just beyond the ordinary. She can't place it yet, but she feels it building, and she knows it's only a matter of time before the calm breaks. As Tasha continues down the street, the playful chatter from the officers fades into the background, but her senses remain heightened. Her steps are measured and steady, but her mind is alert, constantly scanning her surroundings. There's a slight shift in the air. Something feels off. She's been trained to notice these subtleties, to read the signs before they fully materialize, yet nothing about the scene in front of her screams danger. It's just another peaceful morning in the neighborhood, yet her instincts are whispering for her to stay vigilant. Behind her, the sound of the patrol car idling grows faint, but she doesn't turn around. The officers' voices rise again, clearly not ready to let their lighthearted moment pass just yet. Tasha can hear Detective Harlan's voice, calling after her in that teasing tone. "You sure you're not hiding some government secrets, ma'am?" He says, his words more playful than accusatory. Reed joins in. "Yeah, don't tell us you're a secret agent or something." The two of them laugh, the sound of their amusement following her down the street. But Tasha doesn't bite. Instead, she keeps walking, her eyes forward, with a faint smile playing on her lips. She can feel their gaze on her as they continue to watch from the safety of their patrol car, but she isn't worried about that. In fact, it's almost amusing to her how easily they're distracted by her presence. It's a game they've been playing without even realizing it. Just then, something catches her eye from the corner of her vision, a black car driving slowly down the road, its windows slightly tinted. She can't see inside, but she knows this isn't a vehicle that belongs here, not in this quiet residential neighborhood. It moves too deliberately, too cautiously, its pace slower than it should be for a neighborhood like this. Tasha's eyes narrow. The man behind the wheel seems to be looking for something or someone, but what catches her attention more is the way the car lingers as it passes by. She doesn't feel it's a coincidence. For a moment, Tasha wonders if she's overreacting. Maybe it's just another local driver taking their time, but her instincts are never wrong. She's seen these kinds of patterns before, and they always lead to something else, something bigger. Her fingers instinctively graze the phone in her pocket, and she knows the encrypted message from her CIA superior could arrive at any time. She's ready for it. The weight of her training never leaves her, and it never lets her relax completely, not even in moments like this when she's simply walking down a street that seems so ordinary. As the car drives by, Tasha catches a glimpse of something unusual. The man inside the car isn't just driving, he's staring directly at her, his eyes hidden behind the shadow of his hood. But there's no mistaking the sharpness of his gaze. It's too calculating, too aware. Tasha's breath catches slightly as she tries to make sense of what she's seeing. Is he following her, she thinks, but the car keeps moving as if it were simply passing by. The sense of unease grows sharper. She tries to shake it off and focus on the officers who are still playfully talking behind her, unaware of the potential threat, now watching her every move. Tasha takes a deep breath and continues walking forward, but her awareness never falters. She knows the game has just shifted, but she isn't sure yet whether it's a game she's meant to play or one she needs to end before it gets out of control. The officers are still talking, laughing even, but she can feel the shift in the air. Something is happening. She just doesn't know what yet, but her mind is already working overtime to piece it together. Tasha's pace quickens just slightly as she moves past the corner where the patrol car is parked. The breeze seems to pick up around her, carrying with it the faintest hint of something foreign, attention in the air that only she seems to notice. She glances at the street ahead of her. The black car from before has now fully disappeared around the corner, but she can still feel its presence, lingering like a shadow, stalking her every step. The hair on the back of her neck prickles as her instincts scream for her to remain alert. She doesn't break her stride, but every step is now calculated and deliberate. Her fingers brush against the smooth surface of her phone once again, but she resists the temptation to check it. She doesn't want to distract herself. Not yet. She's been in situations like this before where a single misstep could lead to a catastrophic failure. No, she needs to stay focused on the immediate surroundings, keep her mind sharp. She's not just walking down the street anymore. She's analyzing every movement, every sound. She's read every situation like this in the past. She knows what's coming, even if she doesn't know exactly what that is just yet. The patrol car fades into the background, but the sound of the officer's laughter reaches her ears. Once more, it's like a distant echo, a stark contrast to the tension building in the pit of her stomach. She can hear Detective Harlan now making another comment loud enough for her to catch. You know, if you were a secret agent, you'd be a lot less obvious. He laughs, and she knows he's referring to her jacket, the way she carries herself, the deliberate grace in her movements. Tasha doesn't turn around or acknowledge them this time. She keeps her eyes straight ahead, her pace steady and unyielding. She's aware of every detail and every shift in the air, but she refuses to let herself be distracted by their banter, even as it continues to follow her down the street. It's then that the phone buzzes in her pocket. She doesn't need to check it to know what it is. She can feel the encrypted message arriving like a cold chill across her skin. She knows it's from her superior. She can feel the weight of it without even looking. Her mission is still on, but she can't afford to let the information distract her, not now, not with the growing sense of danger lurking at the edges of her perception. Tasha pulls her jacket a little tighter around her as she reaches the intersection ahead of her. She's approaching a small cafe where she often stops for coffee on these walks. It's a routine she's allowed herself to indulge in when the stakes are lower, when there's no imminent threat. But today is different. Today, she feels it creeping closer, that sense of being watched, that feeling of a silent observer waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She's been in situations like this before, and they rarely end with a quiet resolution. Just as she nears the entrance of the cafe, she spots the black car again. It's parked across the street now, the driver's side window slightly cracked. She can't make out any details from this distance, but she feels the same unsettling gaze on her, the same weight of eyes trained on her every movement. This time, she doesn't hesitate. Her hand brushes against her side, where the concealed weapon rests hidden but ready. She steps inside the cafe, trying to seem as casual as possible, but the sense of being trapped is growing stronger by the second. Tasha moves to the counter and orders her coffee, her voice calm and steady, but her mind is racing, every part of her aware of the slightest shift in the atmosphere outside. She knows she's not alone anymore, not by a long shot. The officers who had been joking and teasing her are now walking into the cafe as well, still unaware of the shadow hanging over them, that they're about to be pulled into something bigger, something none of them are prepared for. Tasha takes a deep breath as she waits for her coffee at the counter. Her eyes never leave the door as she carefully scans the street outside the cafe. Through the window, she can see the black car parked across the road. It's still there, the driver's side window now rolled down just enough for her to catch a glimpse of the man inside. His face hidden by a hood, but there's something about the way he sits there, so still, so focused on the cafe, that sends a jolt of tension through her core. She tries to remain composed, but every fiber of her being screams that something is wrong. She can feel the officer's presence behind her as they step into the cafe, their laughter from earlier still echoing in the air, but it feels distant now, as if the room has shifted into another plane where everything outside of the impending danger is irrelevant. Detective Harlan and Officer Reed approach the counter and order their drinks, chatting about the usual things, the weather, the latest local news, but none of their words register in Tasha's mind, not now. Her eyes dart back to the window, her gaze locked on the black car, and the man still sitting inside. She can't shake the feeling that he's watching her, watching for something specific. She's about to turn her focus back to the officers when she notices a subtle movement from the man's hand. It's just a quick flick, but enough to catch her trained eye. He's adjusting something at his waist. She can't make out exactly what it is, but she doesn't need to know the details to understand the implications. It's a weapon. He's armed. Tasha doesn't flinch. She's been in situations like this before, where the difference between life and death is made in the smallest of moments. She's trained to stay calm under pressure, to never let her guard down, no matter how innocuous the surroundings might seem. She reaches for the coffee cup in front of her, but her movements are slow, deliberate, as she keeps one eye on the man and the other on the officers, who are still oblivious to the danger that's closing in on them. Harlan and Reed are standing behind her now, laughing about some joke Tasha can't quite hear, but she doesn't care. Their lightheartedness feels out of place against the rising tension. She's ready for whatever comes next, but she doesn't want to make the first move, not yet. She doesn't want to give away the fact that she's onto something. Her eyes flicker toward the door as she watches the man in the black car reach for something from the passenger seat, his movements smooth and controlled. There's no panic in him, no hesitation. He knows exactly what he's doing. Her heart beats a little faster, but she maintains her composure. She takes a sip of her coffee as if everything is normal, but every muscle in her body is coiled tight, ready to react at the first sign of trouble. The moment the man steps out of the car, she'll have to act fast. She knows that she's already calculating the angles, the escape routes, the possible ways she could neutralize the threat without drawing attention to herself or to the officers, who are still unaware of what's unfolding. She's been in tighter spots before, where everything hinged on her ability to stay hidden, but now, with the man in the car getting ready to make his move, the situation is different. This isn't just a casual stroll through the streets anymore. She's about to be thrust into action, and her every decision will have consequences for herself and for the officers, who've no idea they're about to be pulled into a world of danger that's been lurking in plain sight the entire time. And just as she begins to prepare herself for the confrontation, the man in the black car opens the door slowly and steps out. The man in the black car steps out, and Tasha's focus sharpens instantly. Her hand tightens around the coffee cup, though she doesn't allow her gaze to shift away from him. His movements are deliberate and methodical. He doesn't look like a man in a hurry or one who's concerned with being noticed. He's calm and composed as he shuts the car door behind him and begins to walk toward the cafe. But it's his posture, the way his shoulders are squared, and his eyes scan the area, that sends a chill down Tasha's spine. She recognizes the signs. This isn't some random passerby. This is someone who's on a mission, and he's not here for coffee. Tasha's mind races as she evaluates the situation. She knows she needs to stay calm, but the pressure is mounting. She can feel the weight of the officer's presence behind her, their casual chatter now growing more distant as the world around her narrows into a single point of focus. The man is closing the gap between them, walking purposefully toward the door. She notices the subtle bulge beneath his jacket. He's carrying something, a weapon for sure, but whether it's a gun or something more sophisticated, she can't tell yet. Her heart beats steadily as she calculates her next move. She's been trained to handle situations like this, but she's also aware of the stakes. She's not just dealing with a random criminal, but someone who knows what they're doing, someone who's part of a larger operation, and she has no idea how far that operation stretches. The unknowns are piling up fast, but one thing she knows for sure is that she can't let him get too close, not with the officers still blissfully unaware of the threat that's entering the cafe. Tasha takes a deep breath, her eyes shifting to the side as she briefly surveys the officers. Reed and Harlan are still in their own little world, oblivious to the looming danger, but their position could be useful. If things go south, they're close enough to help, but far enough to stay out of her way if she needs to make a quick exit. But right now, she's more concerned about how to neutralize the threat without causing a scene. She doesn't want to draw attention to herself. Not yet, not until she has the upper hand. The man reaches the door and Tasha feels her muscles tense. Her hand slips casually toward the concealed weapon on her hip. It's a fluid motion. She's done it 1,000 times, but this time the stakes are higher. The man looks over his shoulder as he enters the cafe, his gaze sweeping the room before settling briefly on Tasha. She holds his stare for a split second before quickly looking away. She doesn't want to give anything away, but in that brief moment she knows he's already sizing her up, and that makes her even more cautious. As he steps inside, Tasha's hand hovers over the weapon. She can feel it's time to act, but she's waiting for the right moment. She needs to know exactly what he's carrying and how much time she has before the situation escalates. If she can neutralize him quietly without alerting the officers, then she'll have the advantage. But if not, this could turn into something much worse much faster. The man makes his way to the counter, now standing just a few feet away from her. His body language is calm, but there's an intensity to it that Tasha can't ignore. He's here for something, and she's certain it's not coffee. Her mind flicks through possibilities, but none of them feel right. Something in her gut tells her that whatever this man is here for, it's about to unfold in ways she can't predict yet, but she'll be ready when it does. The man stands at the counter now, his presence more imposing up close. The officers are still oblivious, their backs to him as they chat casually about their plans for the evening. Tasha keeps her eyes on him, but she remains calm. She knows the key to survival is not to react too soon, not to give away her awareness of the situation too early. Her hand hovers just inches from the weapon, but she doesn't draw it yet. She's waiting for something, anything that will give her the advantage. The man orders a black coffee, his voice low and controlled. His eyes never leave the room as he speaks, his attention divided between the barista and the rest of the cafe. Tasha watches his movements closely, his posture relaxed, but his body language is tense. She's seen enough to know that someone who's at ease in a place like this doesn't act this guarded. He's waiting for something or someone, and that makes Tasha's pulse quicken just slightly. The moment he's been preparing for is close, but she's determined not to let him take the first move. She can feel the shift in the atmosphere. It's subtle, but it's there. The small crowd in the cafe remains oblivious to the growing tension. They sip their drinks and chatter in their own worlds, not realizing the danger that's about to erupt in their midst. Tasha knows it's only a matter of time before this man makes his move, and when he does, she has to be ready. She takes another slow sip of her coffee as if nothing's wrong, but her mind is running at full speed, thinking through every possible outcome. The man's phone buzzes in his pocket, and he glances down. For a moment his expression shifts slightly, but it's quick enough that only Tasha notices the change in his demeanor. She feels the tension in her shoulders as her fingers inch toward the small grip of her weapon, tucked beneath her jacket. This isn't the moment she's been preparing for. Everything hinges on how fast she can move, how quickly she can neutralize the threat without drawing attention to herself or causing a panic. Just as the man's hand reaches for his pocket, Tasha moves her own hand just a fraction faster, but before she can react, the door to the cafe opens and a woman walks in. She's unassuming in her appearance, a short brunette with a light blue scarf wrapped around her neck. She seems out of place in the tension-filled atmosphere of the cafe, but her entrance causes the man to hesitate. His eyes flicker toward the door, and in that split second Tasha sees it. He's not just after her or the officers, he's waiting for someone else, someone who's just arrived. The woman walks toward the counter, her gaze sweeping over the room before locking onto the man. Tasha watches the exchange with narrowed eyes. They both seem to acknowledge each other without a word, but the connection is clear. It's as if the woman has become the focus of the man's mission, and the change is immediate. The air feels heavier now, like the entire room has shifted into a different reality, where nothing is safe, and everything is uncertain. Tasha knows she can't wait any longer. The window is closing, and she has to act before it's too late. The woman's steps falter for a brief second as she notices Tasha's watchful gaze. She doesn't seem to recognize her, but there's a flicker of something in her eyes, a quick calculation that tells Tasha this isn't just an innocent bystander. This is another player in the game unfolding before her. Tasha takes her chance. Her hand moves with precision, and the moment the woman looks away, she draws her weapon with a swift motion. The tension snaps into focus as the man's hand pulls something from his jacket, but he's too slow. Tasha's already on the move. Tasha's weapon is in her hand before the man can react. She moves with a precision that only years of training could have taught her. The gun's weight is familiar in her palm as she steps to the side, her body low and ready, every muscle in her body primed for action. The officers are still talking, unaware of what's unfolding just feet away. Reed's voice carries over, but it's drowned out by the beating of her heart as she locks eyes with the man. He doesn't flinch when she draws the weapon, but his hand drops back toward his jacket. It's almost like he expected this. The man's calm demeanor only makes Tasha more certain that he's been in situations like this before. He's not someone who panics. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he's already calculating his next move. His eyes flicker to the woman who's now standing just behind him, her face unreadable, but her posture tense as if she's waiting for the signal to act. Tasha's mind races. She doesn't have much time. She knows if she hesitates for even a second, the situation will spiral out of control. The man is still holding something hidden beneath his jacket. She can't afford to let him get to it before she does. But the woman in the blue scarf is just as much of a threat. She can't take her eyes off of either of them. Not for a moment. The room seems to shrink, as if the walls themselves are closing in around her. The hum of the cafe's music, the clink of cups on saucers all fade into the background, replaced by the sharpness of the moment. The woman moves first. Her hand shifts subtly toward her pocket, as if to draw something, but Tasha is already one step ahead. She pivots quickly, aiming the weapon at the woman. Just as the man shifts into a defensive stance, his eyes narrowing as he realizes the game has changed. His hand grips the edge of his jacket, now fully aware that Tasha has him in her sights, but he doesn't back down. Instead, his gaze hardens with resolve. He doesn't flinch, and Tasha knows this will be over in seconds, one way or another. "Don't do it," Tasha says, her voice steady and firm, but laced with the threat of finality. She can see the woman hesitate, the moment stretching out like a lifetime. She holds the gun steady, not flinching, not moving. Even as the man takes a small step forward, Tasha's grip tightens slightly. She's ready to pull the trigger if she has to, but she knows she doesn't want to. She's trying to avoid this becoming a bloodbath. Her mind works furiously, calculating the safest way to end this with minimal risk to the officers and civilians around them. "Move and I shoot," she adds, her voice cold and unwavering as she keeps her focus locked on both of them. The woman's hand freezes halfway toward her pocket, the tension palpable in the air. Every breath seems to linger a fraction too long before it snaps into the next moment. The man's lips curl into a smile, but there's no warmth in it. It's a smile of someone who's done this before, someone who's confident in their ability to control a situation. Even when it's slipping through their fingers, his eyes flick to the woman just as she makes her move. But before she can fully pull whatever weapon she's reaching for, Tasha steps forward with lightning speed, her hand outstretched to grab her wrist. The move is swift. The woman lets out a gasp. Before she can even process, Tasha twists her arm with practiced precision, pulling the woman's wrist behind her back to disarm her in one smooth motion. The man moves to intervene, but he's too late. Tasha has already got the woman under control with the weapon aimed at her back. The cafe is silent except for the sound of Tasha's breath, steady and controlled as she glances around the room. The officers are finally beginning to notice the shift in the atmosphere. Their eyes widen with confusion. But Tasha doesn't look at them, not yet. Her focus remains entirely on the two suspects in front of her. The cafe is frozen in a stillness that feels unnatural. Every eye in the room is on Tasha, but she doesn't acknowledge them. She's only focused on the woman in her grip and the man who's still standing across from her, his eyes now flickering between her and the woman, both calculating and unreadable. There's an edge in the air like the calm before a storm, and Tasha knows the only thing holding everything together is the tension in her hands as her gun remains trained on the woman's back. She can feel the woman's breath against her own skin, each one shallow and quick, her body tense under the pressure. Tasha doesn't give an inch. Her mind is working overtime, processing every possible outcome, every potential threat that could emerge at any moment. Her eyes flicker to the door for a split second, checking the position of the officers, still unaware but moving toward her in their confusion. And then she shifts her gaze back to the man standing across from her. He hasn't moved, not an inch, his hands raised slightly in mock surrender. But she doesn't trust it for a second. There's a cold calculation behind those eyes, a predator sizing up the room for an opening, and she knows that as long as he's standing there, he's just as dangerous as the woman in her grip, if not more. "Let her go," the man says, his voice low but commanding. His eyes never leave Tasha, his gaze unyielding. It's a command, but it's not a threat. It's just a statement of fact, like he knows how this is going to play out. Tasha doesn't respond. Her finger tightens on the trigger, just enough to remind him that she's in control, but not enough to make it a warning. She doesn't have time for games. She's already made her decision the moment she stepped into this role, and she's not about to back down now. The officers are almost at the counter now, their hands hovering near their holsters, still unsure of what's happening. Harlan's voice cuts through the silence. "Hey, what's going on here?" his tone confused, but starting to edge into authority. Tasha doesn't turn to look at them. She can't afford to. She knows if she gives them too much of her attention, this whole situation will fall apart. She has to make sure everything stays under control. The man in front of her is still waiting for her to react, And she knows he's hoping for a mistake. He's hoping she'll get distracted by the officers long enough for him to make his move. But Tasha doesn't take the bait. She keeps her focus on him, her body still as a statue. The woman's breathing is quickening now, the fear creeping into her movements, but she doesn't fight. She remains still in Tasha's hold, almost too still, as if she's waiting for something, a signal or a plan to unfold. But Tasha doesn't make a move. She knows this isn't over yet. She's only just begun to unravel whatever operation these two are part of, and she's not about to let them take control of the narrative now. "Your move," Tasha says, her voice even but with an underlying edge of warning as she keeps the gun steady. She's giving the man one last chance to reveal his hand. She knows the woman in her grip is only a piece of the puzzle, but the man is the one pulling the strings, and she needs to know who else is involved in this game before it's too late. The man's lips curl into another smile, but this time it's not as confident. There's a flicker of uncertainty behind his eyes, as if he knows this confrontation has just shifted out of his favor. But he doesn't back down. He steps forward, ever so slightly testing the boundaries of her control. Tasha's muscles tense. She's ready for him to make a move, but she doesn't flinch. She keeps her stance firm, knowing that the moment he does, it's all over. She'll be forced to act, and when she does, it won't be just him she has to worry about. The man steps forward just enough that Tasha feels the shift in the air. The tension thickens like the calm before a storm. Her finger hovers on the trigger, but she doesn't fire. Not yet, not until she's sure she has no other choice. His eyes are still locked on hers, and she can see the calculation in them. He's studying her every movement as if trying to figure out her next move. But she's been trained for moments like this to stay one step ahead, to read every shift in the environment, to anticipate what comes next. And she knows this moment is about to boil over. Harlan and Reed are closing in now, their hands moving to their holsters, but they're still unsure of what's happening in front of them. They've crossed the threshold into the danger zone, but they're not prepared for the level of threat Tasha is facing. She's the only one in control right now, but she can't keep it that way for long, not with the man still moving and the woman still waiting for her opportunity to strike. Tasha can feel the clock ticking down, and her heart beats faster as she waits for the moment when she has no other option but to act. The man's hand shifts again toward his jacket, and Tasha moves. In an instant, her body reacts before her mind can even process the situation. Her gun tracks his movement, her entire focus narrowing in on his hand as it emerges from his jacket. She can see the glint of metal, and for the briefest moment, she thinks it might be a gun. But it's not. It's a small device, something sleek and unfamiliar. Tasha's mind races as she quickly processes the implications. It's not a weapon, at least not the kind she was expecting, but it's dangerous nonetheless, and it confirms what she suspected. This isn't a simple hold-up. This is part of something bigger. The woman shifts in her grasp, but Tasha tightens her hold, not letting her go. The device in the man's hand is some kind of communicator or transmitter. She can see the small screen light up briefly before he hides it again. But that one flicker is enough to tell Tasha that this is about information, and that's what makes it even more dangerous. The man isn't just here for a confrontation. He's here to send a message to someone or something bigger than either of them, and she knows she needs to figure out what that is before everything falls apart. "You've got one chance," Tasha says, her voice low but firm. She keeps the gun trained on the woman and doesn't let her move an inch. She's done enough analysis in the past to know when someone's trying to pull a fast one, but she's not about to let them get the upper hand now. "Tell me who you're working for, and I'll make this easier for you." The man's expression shifts subtly, his lips tightening for a moment as if weighing his options. He knows the game has changed, and he knows he's losing control, but he's still calculating, still trying to figure out how to turn the situation in his favor. But Tasha doesn't give him the chance. Her eyes never leave his face. Her grip on the woman tightens, and she can feel the sweat on the woman's skin, a sure sign of fear. But Tasha doesn't care about that right now. She only cares about the information she can extract and the players who are still out there waiting for their turn in the game. The man doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he takes another step forward, but this time Tasha doesn't hesitate. She moves faster than he can react, her arm swinging around to lock his wrist in a vice grip, the gun still aimed at the woman's back. She doesn't let go of the man's wrist until she hears the faint snap of his own fingers. In defeat, his posture changes now, no longer confident, no longer in control. But the damage has already been done. Tasha can feel the shift in the atmosphere, like a wave breaking. The tension has reached its peak, and now she has to find a way to control the fallout. The man's wrist is locked firmly in Tasha's grip, but he doesn't cry out or struggle. He merely stands there, his eyes dark with calculation as he evaluates his options. Tasha can feel the slight tremor in his arm as he realizes he's been caught, but there's still defiance in his posture. He's not about to give up that easily, and Tasha knows he won't be the one to crack under pressure. It'll be the woman, the one who's still standing quietly in her grasp. She's the weak link in the chain, and Tasha knows it's time to break her. The cafe is silent now save for the sound of shallow breaths and the occasional shuffle of feet as the officers approach cautiously. Harlan's voice cuts through the quiet. "You need to drop the gun," he says, his tone more commanding, now though it lacks the force that would make it credible. Reed's voice joins in a moment later, but Tasha barely hears them. She's focused on the woman in her hold, and the man who's still trying to calculate his next move. He knows he's out of options, but he's still hoping for a way out, and that hesitation is what gives Tasha the upper hand. Tasha tightens her grip on the woman's wrist and looks her in the eye for the first time since she drew her weapon. The woman's face is pale, but there's an unsettling calm in her expression, a kind of resignation, like she knows something Tasha doesn't, and it unnerves her for a split second, but she doesn't let it show. She maintains her composure as she speaks. "Who are you working for?" she asks, her voice low and firm, but with an edge of urgency. The woman doesn't answer immediately, her eyes flicking to the man as if seeking permission, but he doesn't get it. Not a word, not a gesture, just a subtle nod that tells her to keep silent. Tasha doesn't wait for the woman to speak. She shifts her hold just enough to make her uncomfortable, her gun pressing harder against her back until the woman lets out a small gasp. She can feel the woman's muscles tighten beneath her grip, but she doesn't move. "I'm not asking again," Tasha says, her voice sharp. The threat in her words is clear, and the woman finally cracks her lips, parting slightly as she speaks in a low whisper. "I can't tell you." Tasha's patience is wearing thin. She doesn't have time for games, not when the stakes are this high, and she's not about to waste any more time on empty answers. "You're going to tell me everything," Tasha warns her, "or this won't end the way you want." The man's eyes flicker with a hint of concern now, but he doesn't move. He's still calculating his options, but Tasha has already started to squeeze the pressure. She needs this woman to crack, and she knows just how to make it happen. The woman's breath quickens now, and for a moment she seems on the verge of breaking, but she steels herself again, her jaw clenching with determination. "You don't understand," she says, her voice quieter this time. "If I tell you, they'll kill me." Tasha's eyes narrow as she processes her words. Something about the way the woman speaks makes her pause for a fraction of a second. There's real fear in her eyes, but it's more than just self-preservation. It's the kind of fear someone has when they're caught in something much bigger than they ever expected, something so dangerous that it could cost them their life. And Tasha can see it now. She's no longer just up against two individuals. She's up against a system, something far more complex than a simple robbery or smuggling operation. The weight of the woman's words hangs in the air, and Tasha feels the shift inside her. She knows she has to dig deeper. She can't let them off the hook this easily. But she also knows this isn't just a typical operation anymore. It's something bigger, something darker, and whatever the woman's about to reveal could change everything. The woman's words echo in Tasha's mind, and for a moment she hesitates just long enough to consider the consequences of what she's hearing. This is no longer just about capturing two suspects. It's about something much more dangerous, something that could unravel everything Tasha's been working toward, and the weight of it presses down on her shoulders. She knows that what the woman says could be true, but she also knows she can't let that fear stop her. She can't afford to back down now. The man watches the exchange closely, his eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to gauge what Tasha will do next. But she's already made up her mind. She won't let fear dictate her actions. She'll dig deeper, even if it means risking everything. "Who are they?" Tasha asks, her voice steady, but with an underlying edge of urgency. The woman doesn't flinch, but she hesitates again, her lips pressed tightly together as if weighing the consequences of speaking too much too soon. But Tasha can see the internal battle in her eyes. She knows it's just a matter of time before the woman breaks. The man shifts slightly at the sound of Tasha's question, his body language telling her everything she needs to know. He's nervous now, because he knows the woman is on the brink of breaking, and whatever she says will change the game entirely. He's out of options, and so is she. The woman's silence is a clear sign that she's been warned not to talk, but the fear in her eyes tells Tasha she's starting to doubt whether her loyalty is worth the price she might pay for it. The cafe around them feels like a distant world. Now the officers have stopped in their tracks, unsure of how to proceed. They don't understand the gravity of the situation. Tasha can feel their eyes on her, but she doesn't acknowledge them. Her focus remains entirely on the woman and the man in front of her. She has to get the truth from them now before they figure out a way to escape. "Tell me who you're working for," Tasha demands again, her tone hard and unyielding. The woman's breath catches in her throat, and for a moment Tasha thinks she's about to say something, but then her eyes flicker toward the door, as if looking for an escape. Tasha follows her gaze just as a car pulls up outside the cafe, the engine rumbling faintly in the distance. The woman stiffens, and Tasha feels her pulse quicken. She knows something is about to happen, but she doesn't know what it is yet. The man's eyes dart toward the door as well, and in that split second, Tasha knows that whatever's coming is connected to the people they're working for. The woman's warning makes more sense now. They're not just a couple of rogue criminals, they're part of something much larger, something that's still out of reach, closing in fast, and Tasha's instincts scream that they have to move quickly. The woman shifts in Tasha's grip again, but this time she makes no effort to break free. Instead, she leans in just slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "They'll come for you too," she says. "All of you. They've been watching every move you've made." Tasha's heart skips a beat, and she feels the weight of her next question pressing down on her. "Who are they?" she demands, her voice cold and precise. The woman looks at her for a moment and then glances at the man again. At this time there's a flicker of something else in her eyes, something that says she's finally ready to talk. Something has broken inside her, and Tasha knows she has the moment to get the truth. But just as she's about to press the woman for more, the door bursts open and the sound of hurried footsteps fills the cafe. The officers freeze at the sudden noise, but Tasha doesn't take her eyes off the woman or the man. She knows the moment has arrived, but so has something else, something that could make everything explode in seconds. The door swings open and Tasha's pulse races as a group of armed men storm into the cafe, their presence so sudden and forceful that the officers freeze in place, their hands still hovering over their holsters, unsure of what to do next. Tasha doesn't turn to face them. Her eyes are still locked on the woman and the man in front of her, but she can feel the shift in the air. She knows they've just stepped into a new level of danger. The game has changed, and now there's no turning back. The armed men move quickly, their eyes scanning the room as they make their way toward Tasha's position, but they don't immediately open fire. They don't have to. Their mere presence is enough to send a message, one that speaks louder than any words could. The woman in Tasha's grip tenses as the men approach, and the man's eyes flicker with an unreadable emotion. He's not surprised by their arrival. He knew they were coming, and Tasha realizes with a sinking feeling that they've been prepared for this moment from the start. The leader of the group steps forward, his eyes fixed on Tasha with cold precision. He doesn't speak at first, but the tension in the room thickens with each passing second. Tasha feels the weight of the situation pressing down on her, but she doesn't flinch. She doesn't let the men intimidate her. She's been through worse, and she knows how to keep control even when everything around her is falling apart. But this time it's different. This time the stakes are higher, and the threat is more real than anything she's faced before. The leader's gaze shifts briefly to the officers, who are still frozen in place, their guns still holstered, but now they're unsure of how to respond. The armed men don't seem concerned by the presence of law enforcement. They move with the confidence of people who are in complete control, and Tasha knows this is bigger than she thought. This isn't just a random operation or a poorly planned robbery. These men are part of something far more dangerous, and if she doesn't figure out how to stop them now, there will be no stopping them at all. The leader looks back at Tasha, his voice low but steady. "You've made a mistake," he says, his words deliberate and filled with warning. Tasha doesn't blink. She doesn't show fear. She knows better than to give them that kind of satisfaction. She holds her ground as the leader steps closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Let them go," he orders, his voice carrying an icy authority that cuts through the tension. Now Tasha's grip on the woman tightens, but she doesn't move. She's weighing her options, her mind racing with possibilities. She knows she can't give in to their demands, but she also knows the odds are stacked against her, and every moment she hesitates, the situation grows more volatile. The woman in her hold shifts slightly, but Tasha doesn't loosen her grip. She's not backing down, and she won't let these men take control of the situation. The officers start to move now, slowly, their hands still on their holsters, but unsure of what to do next. They can see the danger now, but it's too late. They've already lost their chance to intervene. Tasha's on her own, and she knows that the armed men are waiting for her to make a move. They know she won't surrender. They know she won't give up easily, and that's exactly what makes her dangerous. The leader's eyes flicker with annoyance as he sees that Tasha isn't responding the way he expects, but he doesn't back off. Instead, he takes another step closer. And that's when Tasha makes her move. In the blink of an eye, she shifts her weight and draws her weapon, her gun aimed squarely at the man's chest, her finger tight on the trigger. She doesn't give him time to react before she speaks again, her voice cold and unwavering. "You've made the mistake," she says, and in that instant everything in the room seems to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable to happen. The cafe falls silent as Tasha's gun remains trained on the leader of the armed men, her finger hovering just above the trigger. She can feel the weight of every eye in the room, but her focus is entirely on him. His expression hasn't changed, but she knows the situation is rapidly escalating. The tension is thick enough to suffocate, and every second feels like it could be the last one before everything explodes. The leader doesn't move, not even a muscle. His eyes narrow as he assesses her posture, the gun aimed directly at him, but he doesn't flinch. Instead, he looks around the room as if searching for something else to use to his advantage. But Tasha doesn't give him the opening. She doesn't let her guard down even for a second. She's been in too many high-stakes situations to let her emotions get the better of her, and she's not about to make that mistake now. The woman still in Tasha's grip shifts slightly and whispers something too quiet for anyone else to hear, but Tasha catches it. She can feel the weight of the words as they linger in her mind, and for a fleeting moment she wonders if she's missed something crucial, something that could tip the scales in her favor. But she doesn't have the luxury of time to dwell on it. The armed men are closing in, the distance between them growing smaller with every passing second, but Tasha isn't backing down. She's not moving. Harlan and Reed are still frozen, unsure of how to proceed, and for a moment Tasha feels the pressure of being the only one standing between the armed men and the officers. They're all relying on her now, and she knows the decision she makes in the next few moments could change everything. She won't back down. But she also knows this isn't just about firepower, it's about strategy, it's about outsmarting them, and she has one chance to do it right. The leader's lips curl into a smile, a slow, predatory smile, like he knows something she doesn't like. He's already won. But Tasha doesn't let the smile shake her resolve. Instead, she shifts her position, just slightly adjusting the angle of her gun, so it's not just aimed at him, but at the group behind him as well. She's made her move, and now they're all in her sights. "You think you've won," Tasha says, her voice cold, controlled, her eyes flickering to the officers still unsure of their next move. But the tension is palpable. They know she's in charge now. They're waiting for her to take the lead. "But you're wrong," she adds, her voice low but certain. "This is just the beginning." For a moment there's nothing but silence, and in that silence Tasha hears the faint hum of a phone vibrating in the man's pocket. He freezes for the briefest second, but it's enough to confirm everything she needs to know. They've been waiting for a signal. They were never in control. She was just the distraction. The entire thing was meant to play out this way, and now she knows exactly what she has to do. Without warning, Tasha moves faster than anyone expects. Her gun shifts. In an instant, she fires a single shot that takes out the man's communicator. With a precise shot, the device falls to the ground in a shower of sparks, and the leader's eyes widen in disbelief as his entire plan unravels in front of him. The armed men hesitate, their eyes darting between the leader and Tasha, but she's already several steps ahead of them. The woman's face pales as the reality of the situation sets in. The game has changed and Tasha is in full control. Now she knows this battle isn't over, but she's won the first round, and as she takes a deep breath, she feels the weight of the moment sink in. She's ready for whatever comes next.